Read her letter before you decide she doesn't belong here. The words came from the back of the admissions office, quiet enough to make every adult turn. Lily Carter stood frozen beside the polished front desk, both hands wrapped around a wrinkled handwritten letter with a tiny star drawn at the bottom. Behind her, Elijah Carter, still in his dark blue electrician's uniform, placed one steady hand on her shoulder. Marcus Bennett kept his smile, but his fingers pressed the folder shut. "Ma'am, that document is not part of the required review." Lily swallowed and whispered, "But they never read it." 3 hours earlier, the morning had started with the smell of machine oil on Elijah's hands and the soft buzz of fluorescent lights over his kitchen table. Lily sat across from him in her navy sweater, smoothing the same letter again and again until the left corner stayed bent no matter how carefully she pressed it flat. Elijah noticed but did not tell her to stop. He only slid a paper towel under her glass of orange juice so it would not leave a ring on the page. His wedding band clicked softly against the mug when he lifted his coffee, and for 1 second, his eyes went to the empty chair near the window. Then he looked back at his daughter and smiled like nothing inside him hurt. "You ready, baby?" Lily nodded, though her fingers tightened around the paper. "It's not too much?" she asked. "Telling them about you?" Elijah folded the printed appointment confirmation and tucked it into his shirt pocket, the same pocket that carried tiny copper wire scraps and a pencil worn down to half its size. "If it's true, it's not too much," he said. "Just remember, you don't have to make people feel small to tell them who you are." Whitmore Academy looked like a place built to keep noise out. Tall glass doors reflected the morning sun. The floors inside shone so brightly Lily could see her shoes in them. A woman at the front desk wore a cream blazer and a silver name badge. She smiled until she saw Elijah's tool belt. Her eyes dropped to his work boots, then rose to Lily's braids, then to the letter in the child's hands. "Admissions check-in?" Elijah asked. He spoke gently, the way he spoke near loose wires and sleeping children. The woman typed Lily's name. Her smile thinned. "Your appointment was at 7:15. Elijah blinked once. "Ma'am." The school confirmed 9:30. He reached for the folded paper in his pocket. Before he could place it on the desk, a tall man in a charcoal suit stepped from an office marked Vice Principal Marcus Bennett. His voice was calm, practiced, almost kind. "Mr. Carter, these things happen. The scholarship pool is very competitive, and we do ask families to respect the process." Lily looked from his face to the letter. "I brought what they asked me to write." Marcus did not take it. A child's letter is not required at this stage. Behind them, a gray-haired woman in a simple black coat paused beside the trophy case, her hand resting on the strap of her leather purse. No one introduced her. No one noticed the way she stopped smiling when Marcus said Lily's name without opening the file. The receptionist reached for the letter and placed it face down beneath a stack of cream-colored folders, but Elijah saw one thing before it disappeared. The tiny star Lily had drawn at the bottom was trembling because his daughter's hands had been shaking. The tiny star disappeared under the stack of cream-colored folders, and Lily's hand stayed open in the air for 1 second too long, as if her fingers had not understood that the letter was gone. Elijah saw it, saw the way his daughter tried to pull her shoulders back the way he had taught her, and he did not reach across the desk. He only touched the edge of the printed appointment confirmation in his shirt pocket and said, "Ma'am, I have the time right here." The receptionist's nails clicked against the keyboard. Marcus Bennett stepped closer before she could answer. "Mr. Carter." "Yes, sir. We understand this is disappointing." The hallway seemed to shrink around those 3 polite sentences. A fountain murmured beside the admissions wall, soft and expensive, pushing water over black stone, while a line of parents in tailored coats pretended not to listen. The air smelled like lemon polish and new paper. Marcus lowered his voice just enough to sound respectful, and just loud enough for the nearest parents to hear. However, scholarship interviews require punctuality, preparation, and respect for institutional procedure. Elijah slowly unfolded the confirmation page. It had been printed at the public library the night before because his home printer had run out of ink. One corner carried a faint gray smudge from his thumb, machine oil that no amount of soap had fully lifted after a night repair job. At the top, in clean black letters, the appointment read Lily Carter, 9:30 a.m. He placed it flat on the marble counter with both hands. "I'm not asking for special treatment," he said. "I'm asking you to honor the appointment you gave my child." The receptionist glanced at the paper. Her eyes moved quickly, then stopped. "It does say 9:30, she murmured. Marcus turned his head a little too fast. "Denise." The woman went still. His smile did not break, but something sharp passed through the space between them. "The live system is the system of record," Marcus said. "Printed copies can be outdated." "Then check when it changed," Elijah replied. No anger, no challenge in his voice, just the kind of calm that made the words harder to push aside. Marcus folded his hands in front of his jacket. "Mr. Carter, I can see you care about your daughter. That is admirable. But there are families who have followed every step without confusion. It would be unfair to them if we paused the process every time someone arrived with an old printout." A woman in a pearl necklace leaned toward another parent near the glass wall. "Is he maintenance?" she whispered. Her friend gave a small laugh into her coffee lid. Lily heard it. Elijah knew she heard it because her chin dipped, and the little beads at the ends of her braids tapped softly against her sweater. He moved half a step, not in front of her like he was hiding her, but beside her, close enough that she could feel he was still there. "Baby," he said quietly. "Eyes forward." Lily lifted her eyes. Marcus looked down at Elijah's boots, then at the tool belt still clipped at his waist from the emergency call he had taken before sunrise. "There is a side exit near the administrative hall," Marcus said. "It may be more comfortable for your daughter. We try to preserve a calm environment for all applicants." "The side exit?" Elijah asked, "just to avoid unnecessary embarrassment." The words were wrapped in velvet, but they landed like a door closing. The fountain kept running. A printer somewhere behind the desk coughed out one page, then another. The gray-haired woman in the simple black coat, still near the trophy case, turned slightly. She had been reading a plaque about the school's founding, but now her eyes were on the appointment paper, on the oil smudge at the corner, on the way Elijah had not raised his voice even once. Lily's fingers moved toward the folder stack. "My letter," she said. The receptionist placed one hand on top of the folders. "We'll attach what is necessary." "I wrote it for the board," Lily whispered. Marcus softened his face, the way adults do when they want a child to stop asking without feeling guilty. "Sweetheart, the board reviews academic readiness, not personal feelings." Elijah's jaw tightened once, so briefly that only someone watching closely would have seen it. "Sir," he said, "she is 9. Please don't make her feel foolish for doing what your instructions asked her to do." For the first time, the gray-haired woman looked at Marcus instead of Elijah. Marcus gave a quiet laugh, almost apologetic. "No one is making anyone feel foolish. But Mr. Carter, we cannot bend procedure for emotion." Elijah looked at the appointment paper still lying between them. "Then let procedure tell the truth." Denise swallowed. Her screen glowed pale blue against her face. She clicked once, then twice. A small frown pulled at her mouth before she could hide it. Marcus shifted beside her. "That won't be necessary." But the screen had already changed. In the reflection on the marble counter, Elijah saw the live schedule beside Lily's name. It did not say 9:30 a.m. It said 7:15 a.m. Before the office had opened to families, before the front doors had unlocked, before Lily and Elijah had even left their apartment, someone had already made his daughter late. The number on the screen stayed there like an accusation. 7:15 a.m. Elijah looked at it, then at the printed paper on the marble counter, and for a moment the only sound in the admissions office was the fountain whispering over black stone. Lily's fingers found the side seam of his uniform pants and held it. He could feel the small tremble in her hand, but he did not let his own voice change. "We were not late," he said. Marcus Bennett's smile returned too quickly. "The system can be confusing to families who are new to this process." "We were not late," Elijah repeated, softer this time, not to Marcus, but to Lily. Her shoulders eased by one breath. Then the lights above the interview hallway flickered once, twice, and died with a sharp pop. The polished office fell into a strange gray dimness. Someone gasped. A security panel near the glass corridor began to beep, high and thin, and the automatic door halfway down the hall froze with a boy and his mother trapped on the other side. The boy could not have been older than 6. He pressed both palms to the glass, his face crumpling as the door refused to slide open. His mother tried to smile at him through the gap, but panic had already reached her eyes. "Maintenance is on another floor," Denise said, standing too fast. "Do not touch anything," Marcus ordered, more irritated than worried. "We have a protocol." Elijah looked down at Lily. "Stay right here where I can see you." She nodded and hugged her arms around herself. He unclipped the old leather tool pouch from his belt, the one with a cracked strap he kept meaning to replace, and walked toward the beeping panel. "Sir," Marcus said sharply, "this is not necessary." Elijah stopped beside the wall box and turned just enough to answer. "There's a child behind a locked glass door. It's necessary." He did not say it loudly. He did not say it like a challenge. That made it worse for Marcus, because several parents heard it and looked toward the trapped boy instead of the scholarship desk. The gray-haired woman in the black coat took one slow step away from the trophy case. Her eyes followed Elijah's hands as he asked the older building attendant for permission, not authority. "Mr. Paul, right?" Elijah said, reading the man's name tag. "May I open this panel? I'll do a temporary bypass only if you're comfortable." The attendant blinked, surprised to be addressed with respect in a room where most people walked past him as if he were furniture. "If you know what you're doing." Elijah gave one small nod. "Enough to make it safe." The panel cover came loose with 2 turns of his screwdriver. A warm burnt smell slipped out, sharp as singed plastic. Elijah leaned closer, not rushing, his body blocking the exposed wires from the children in the hallway. He had worked since 4 in the morning at an apartment complex where a grandmother's heater had failed, and the muscles in his back still carried that cold stairwell. Rent was due Friday. His truck needed rear brakes. The appointment paper on the counter might be the only door Lily had this year. Still, when he saw the loose relay trembling inside the box, he forgot the insult long enough to care about the danger. Lily watched her father's face change into the quiet focus she knew from home, the look he got when a toaster smoked or a neighbor's porch light sparked in the rain. "Daddy can fix it," she whispered, not bragging, just believing. Marcus heard her and looked away as if faith itself annoyed him. "This really should wait for facilities," he said. The little boy behind the glass started crying. Elijah pulled a small roll of electrical tape from his pouch, steadied the relay, and spoke without turning. "Mr. Paul, when I reset this, hold the release button for 3 seconds. Not before." "Got it, ma'am," he called gently to the boy's mother. "Tell him to step back from the seam." She did. Elijah counted under his breath. The panel beeped once more, lower this time. Then the glass door side open. The boy ran into his mother's arms. A few parents clapped softly before remembering they were in a room where status had rules. Elijah closed the panel and wiped his fingers on a folded rag already dark with work. "Temporary only," he told Mr. Paul. "You'll want the relay replaced today. Door safety issue." "What do I owe you?" the attendant asked. Elijah shook his head. "Nothing. Just write it in your service log so the next person knows what happened." Mr. Paul pulled a clipboard from the lower drawer of the reception cabinet. The paper was yellow-edged, ordinary, almost invisible. Elijah printed his name in careful block letters. Elijah Carter. Under notes, he wrote, "Emergency safety repair, no charge." Then he added his phone number in case facilities needed to ask what he had touched. The gray-haired woman saw the words. Her face did not soften into pity, tightened with attention. "No charge. Child safety issue." Meanwhile, Lily had returned to the waiting chair. Her letter should have been beside her backpack, where she had placed it when the lights went out. Instead, the chair was empty. She looked under the seat, then behind her shoes, then toward the marble desk. Denise was sliding a cream folder into the lower drawer with her left hand, while her right hand reached for the mouse. Marcus stood beside her, angled just enough to block most of the movement from the room. Elijah was still handing the clipboard back when Lily looked up at him, her mouth small and scared. "Daddy," she said, "my letter is gone." Mr. Paul glanced from the service log to the drawer Denise had just closed, and for the first time, the small act Elijah had done for free looked less like kindness and more like the first thing in the room that had been written down where no one could erase it. The word "gone" did not land loudly, but it changed the air. Denise's hand stayed on the lower drawer handle a half-second too long, and Marcus Bennett turned before Lily had finished speaking. "No one has taken anything," he said, smooth as glass. "Children misplace papers when they're nervous." Lily looked down at her shoes. Elijah felt the old, familiar pull to defend her fast, to put his body between his daughter and the shame being handed to her, but he made himself breathe once through his nose. The admissions office had gone bright again, the lights humming overhead, the fountain still moving water like nothing had happened. "Lily," he said gently, crouching beside her chair. "Tell me where you last saw it." She swallowed. "On the chair. When the lights went off." "Was it folded?" "No," she rubbed one thumb against the other, thinking the way children think, not in timelines but in pictures. The star was showing. Marcus gave a polite sigh. "Mr. Carter, with respect, we cannot stop admissions because a child misplaced a personal note." "I understand," Elijah said. He stood up slowly. "Then may we check the camera over the waiting chairs?" Denise's eyes moved to the small black dome mounted high near the hallway corner. Its red light blinked once, steady and alive. Marcus followed Elijah's gaze and stepped half a pace sideways, just enough that his shoulder blocked the clearest view of the camera from the desk. "Unfortunately, that camera has been under maintenance since yesterday." The gray-haired woman in the black coat, still unintroduced, looked at the dome, then at the blinking red light. Her face did not change, but her fingers tightened on the strap of her purse. "If it is under maintenance," she asked softly, "why is it recording?" Denise looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Denise. A small silence opened, thin but sharp. "The light can remain active during maintenance," Marcus said. "It does not mean usable footage exists." His explanation was reasonable enough that no one in the room could call it a lie yet. That was Marcus's gift. He did not slam doors. He covered them with policy language until decent people felt rude for touching the handle. Elijah did not argue with him. He turned back to the marble counter where his printed confirmation still lay beside a vase of white orchids. The oil smudge on the corner had dried into a faint crescent. He moved the paper gently, placing it under the brighter pool of light from the desk lamp. "Earlier," he said, "you said the live system showed 7:15. Marcus nodded once. "Correct. And you said printed copies can be outdated." "They can be. Then someone should be able to see when this changed." The receptionist's keyboard clicked once, then stopped. The gray-haired woman stepped closer, not to Elijah, but to the screen. "That is a fair process question," she said. Marcus's eyes narrowed with polite annoyance. "Ma'am, I'm not sure this concerns you." "It concerns the process," she replied. The word sounded different when she said it, heavier, like she knew what it was supposed to mean. Denise hesitated. Marcus's voice became quieter. "Denise, we don't need to pull internal logs for every confused applicant." Confused. The word struck Lily harder than loud anger would have. Elijah saw her blink fast. He placed his hand lightly on her shoulder, his thumb moving once over the knit of her sweater. "She's not confused," he said. "She's disappointed. There's a difference." The older woman looked at him then, not with pity, with attention. Denise opened a side panel on the admissions software. The screen shifted from the clean calendar view to a gray activity log filled with narrow lines of text. Timestamps, user IDs, edits. At first it meant nothing to anyone standing more than a few feet away. But Elijah saw the receptionist's face change. Her lips parted, then pressed together. "What is it?" Marcus asked. It shows an edit, Denise said carefully. This morning. Marcus let out a small breath, almost a laugh. Administrative cleanup. We reorganize morning slots all the time. At 6:12, Elijah asked. He had not meant to say it loudly. The number had just caught his eye. 6:12 a.m. Before the front office opened. Before the fountain ran. Before Lily had tied her shoes at the kitchen table. Denise looked at him, startled that he had seen it from where he stood. Elijah did not explain that reading tiny serial numbers in dark breaker boxes had trained his eyes to catch small things most people missed. He only tapped the counter once, very lightly, beside the printed confirmation. Who made the change? Marcus answered too quickly. The system batches updates under staff accounts. The gray-haired woman turned toward him. Which staff account? Marcus smiled, but this time the smile had to climb a hill. Ma'am, internal audit language can be misleading without context. Then give us the context. The room quieted again. Even the parents by the glass wall had stopped whispering. Denise scrolled one line lower. A username appeared at the edge of the screen, and she moved the cursor as if to cover it, then thought better of it. M. Bennett. Marcus reached toward the mouse. That's enough for now. Elijah did not grab his wrist. He did not raise his voice. He simply slid his printed confirmation a few inches closer to the gray-haired woman, placing the school's own email stamp under the same light as the edit log. Paper and screen. 9:30 and 7:15. A father's careful fold and a hidden morning change. Lily looked up at the red camera light still blinking in the corner and whispered, Daddy. He was already standing by the desk before the lights went out. Marcus froze for the smallest piece of a second, but the gray-haired woman saw it, and for the first time her eyes moved from the missing letter to the lower drawer Denise had closed. Marcus's hand stopped inches from the mouse, and Lily's whisper seemed to hang under the fluorescent lights longer than it should have. He was already standing by the desk before the lights went out. Nobody accused him. Nobody had to. The words were small enough to belong to a 9-year-old, but they pointed toward the lower drawer with a steadiness that made Denise pull her hand back from the keyboard. Marcus straightened his jacket. Children remember fear more clearly than facts, he said, his voice still polished. We should be careful not to build a story out of a child's anxiety. Elijah felt Lily shrink beside him. Not much. Just enough that her shoulder left his palm for a second, like she was trying to make less of herself. He stepped closer, not forward into Marcus's space, but back beside his daughter. She told you what she saw, he said. You don't have to believe her yet, but don't call her afraid like that makes her wrong. The gray-haired woman in the black coat watched his face as he said it. There was no performance in him, no hunger to win the room. He was not using his daughter's embarrassment as a weapon. He was putting a quiet fence around it. Marcus gave a sympathetic nod, the kind of nod that had been practiced in meetings where hard decisions were made softer by expensive language. Mr. Carter, I appreciate your concern, but the longer we continue this, the more distressing it becomes for Lily. Perhaps the kindest option is to step away today, allow us to review internally, and contact you if anything requires correction. If anything? Elijah repeated. Yes. Her appointment was changed. The log requires context. Her letter is missing. It may have been misplaced. The camera is supposedly down. Marcus's smile thinned. Again, context. A chair scraped somewhere near the glass wall and then stopped. The sound left a raw mark across the polished quiet. Eleanor, still unnamed to most of the room, lowered her purse from her shoulder and placed it on the counter with care. Then let us gather context, she said. Marcus looked at her as if finally deciding she was becoming inconvenient. Ma'am, I'm afraid admissions records are confidential. As they should be. Her tone did not rise. So preserve them. Denise looked from Eleanor to Marcus. Preserve. Do not delete camera footage. Do not overwrite activity logs. Do not move applicant materials from this desk until the process review is complete. Marcus let out a soft laugh. And you are. Eleanor opened her mouth, then closed it again, choosing not to answer yet. Instead, she turned to Elijah. Mr. Carter, if someone on the board could make a call today and have your daughter reviewed quietly, would you accept that? The question entered the room like a test hidden inside kindness. Denise looked relieved, as if a private favor might end the tension. Marcus's posture loosened a little. Even a few parents seemed to expect Elijah to grab the offer, to prove what they already believed, that people like him only wanted a door opened by someone else's hand. Elijah looked at Lily first. Her eyes were wet but focused on him. He knelt so they were nearly level. Baby, do you remember what we said in the truck? Lily nodded. No shortcuts if they hurt somebody else. That's right. He stood and faced Eleanor. Ma'am, I'm grateful you would even ask, but my daughter should not have to sneak into a place she earned the right to enter. If she belongs here, let the records say it in daylight. If she doesn't, we'll accept that. But I won't teach her that truth needs a back hallway. The admissions office grew still. The fountain sounded louder. The air conditioner hummed over everyone's heads with a low, tired vibration. Eleanor's hand, resting on her purse, slowly flattened against the leather. She did not smile at Elijah. She looked at him the way a person looks at a locked door after realizing the key is not where everyone said it was. Very well, she said. Daylight, then. Marcus's eyes cooled. This is becoming inappropriate.
No, Eleanor replied.
It is becoming documented. She turned to Denise. Please call whoever manages your security system. Denise hesitated only once before picking up the phone. Marcus leaned down and murmured, Denise, handle this through me. She froze with the receiver halfway to her ear. Elijah saw the movement. Eleanor saw it too. Mr. Paul, the building attendant, still holding the yellow-edged service log from the electrical repair, stepped forward awkwardly. The hallway camera ain't on the admissions network, he said. Facilities has the backup. It records even when the desk system is down. Marcus looked at him as if a chair had spoken. Paul, that is not necessary. Mr. Paul swallowed, but he did not step back. You told me last month to stop sending those clips to front office because they took up storage. I kept the backup anyway. For the first time, Marcus did not have a polished answer ready. Denise made the call. While they waited, Elijah lifted Lily's backpack from the floor and brushed a bit of dust from the bottom so she would not see him watching Marcus. He took the printed appointment confirmation and slid it carefully into the front pocket, not hiding it, preserving it. Lily leaned against his side. Did I do something bad? She whispered. The question almost broke something in his face. He bent his head close to hers. No, ma'am. You told the truth in a room that did not want to slow down. That is not bad. A laptop arrived from facilities 6 minutes later, carried by a young IT technician with a lanyard full of keys. The hallway footage was grainy and slightly high-angled. It showed the waiting chairs, the marble counter, the trophy case. The red light on the camera itself reflected faintly in the glass. It showed the lights flickering. It showed Elijah walking toward the security panel. It showed Lily placing her letter on the chair beside her backpack, star side up. Marcus stood at Denise's shoulder at the counter. Then the screen stuttered for 3 seconds as the lights dipped. When the picture steadied, Denise reached over the counter, picked up the letter, and slid it under a cream folder. Marcus did not touch the letter. He did not need to. He tapped twice on the stack with 2 fingers, a small motion so ordinary most people would have missed it. Denise opened the lower drawer and placed the folder inside. The room did not explode. Tightened. A coffee cup stopped halfway to a parent's mouth. The IT technician stopped chewing his gum. Marcus breathed in through his nose and said, That clip lacks context. Eleanor leaned closer to the screen. It has movement, time, object, and custody. Elijah looked down at Lily. Her shoulders had lifted again, not in triumph, but in relief. Someone had seen what happened to her small paper thing. Someone had seen that she had not invented it. Elijah did not turn to Marcus. He did not say, I told you. He only asked, Can my daughter have her letter back now? Denise's face flushed. Slowly, with fingers that shook just enough to betray her, She opened the lower drawer. The cream folder was there. Lily's letter was inside, folded once down the middle where it had not been folded before. Eleanor reached out before Denise could hand it to Marcus. "I'll hold that," she said. Marcus's smile returned, but now it looked built from glass under pressure. "Ma'am, you are inserting yourself into a confidential admissions matter." Eleanor looked at the folded letter in her hand, at the tiny star now creased through the middle, then at the laptop screen where the timestamp glowed in the corner. "No, Mr. Bennett," she said quietly. "I am preserving evidence." At that moment, the IT technician, trying to close a notification window, accidentally revealed the subject line of an email still open behind the security feed. Donor Family Priority List. The words Donor Family Priority List stayed on the laptop screen for less than 2 seconds before the IT technician hurriedly clicked the window closed. But 2 seconds were enough to change the room. Nobody spoke. The soft rush of the fountain suddenly sounded much louder than polished conversation ever had. Eleanor's eyes remained fixed on the dark screen after the email disappeared, while Marcus Bennett reached toward the keyboard with careful restraint instead of panic. "That's an internal administrative document," he said evenly. "The title alone doesn't explain its purpose." Elijah didn't answer. He looked at Lily instead. She was holding her letter again with both hands, smoothing the fresh crease someone else had forced across the tiny star she had drawn the night before. She wasn't trying to fix the paper anymore. She was simply touching it, as if making sure it still belonged to her. Elijah rested his hand lightly against the top of her backpack. "Keep it with you," he whispered. "Nobody touches it unless you say yes." Lily nodded. Across the counter, Denise looked as though she wanted to disappear into the polished cabinets behind her. Mr. Paul quietly folded the yellow service log against his chest, almost protectively. The gray-haired woman finally turned toward the IT technician. "Would you reopen that email?" she asked. He hesitated. I'd need authorization." Marcus answered before anyone else could. "That won't be necessary." "Perhaps not," she replied. "But preserving it will be." Marcus folded his arms. "Again, ma'am, you continue involving yourself in confidential school business without identifying your relationship to this institution." She ignored the question. Instead, she looked at the service log still visible in Mr. Paul's hands. "May I see that?" The older maintenance attendant walked over without hesitation. She studied Elijah's handwriting for a quiet moment. "Emergency safety repair. No charge. Child safety issue." The words were simple. "No signature flourished." No attempt to impress anyone. She looked back toward Elijah. "You repaired the security door before asking anyone who owned this building." Elijah shrugged slightly. "There was a child behind it. And you declined payment. Because charging someone after a safety emergency didn't seem right." Marcus gave a restrained smile. "That's admirable. But I'm not sure how it's relevant to admissions." Eleanor folded the clipboard closed. "Character is always relevant." Marcus's expression barely changed, but one finger began tapping softly against his sleeve. Once, twice, the same rhythm Lily had unknowingly described. Elijah noticed it. So did Denise. The room settled into another uneasy silence before Eleanor spoke again. "Mr. Carter." "Yes, ma'am?" "Earlier, when you saw the activity log, you noticed the timestamp before anyone mentioned it." Elijah nodded carefully. "The numbers were large enough. You read them from several feet away. I spend most days reading tiny serial numbers on electrical panels in poor lighting. My eyes go looking for numbers before they look for faces." There was no pride in the answer, only explanation. Eleanor accepted it with a slight inclination of her head. Marcus, however, seized it immediately. "Exactly," he said. "Mr. Carter works with technical systems, which makes assumptions easier. Reading a timestamp doesn't establish wrongdoing." Elijah agreed without hesitation. "You're right." Marcus blinked once. He had expected resistance, not agreement. "One timestamp doesn't prove anything," Elijah continued quietly. "Patterns do." That single sentence settled over the admissions office like another piece of furniture nobody had noticed being carried inside. Eleanor turned toward Denise. "Can you search other scholarship records?" Marcus stepped forward. "Absolutely not." "Why?" she asked. "Applicant privacy. We can hide names. Institutional policy." "Then show me anonymous timestamps." Marcus inhaled slowly. "Administrative edits happen constantly." "Good," Eleanor answered. "Then they should be easy to explain." Denise looked trapped between the vice principal standing beside her and the older woman whose calm somehow carried more weight than titles. Finally, she opened another reporting screen. The monitor reflected faintly across the polished marble counter. One by one, scholarship applications appeared. Applicant IDs replaced names. Edit histories lined the right side. Eleanor pointed gently. "Sort by manual edits." Denise clicked. The room waited. A list appeared. One record, then another, then another. Several scholarship files had been manually adjusted before office hours over the previous 3 admission cycles. Nobody said anything for several seconds. Marcus cleared his throat. "As I explained, scheduling corrections happen." Elijah still didn't speak. Instead, he noticed something else. Every manually edited record carried the same administrative account initials that had appeared beside Lily's file. M. Bennett. Denise swallowed. It does seem to be the same account. Because I supervise admissions," Marcus answered immediately. "Centralized scheduling prevents mistakes." Eleanor looked at the screen longer than before. "How many applicants received manual adjustments?" Denise quietly counted under her breath. 23. "How many remained scholarship finalists?" Denise's fingers moved again. The printer beside her suddenly came alive, feeding out a report page one sheet at a time. Nobody interrupted it. The machine clicked, rolled, clicked again. Denise stared at the totals after the last page landed. 3. Another silence. Even the parents waiting along the windows had stopped pretending to check their phones. Marcus spoke before anyone else could process the numbers. "Correlation is not causation." Elijah nodded again. "You're right." Marcus looked almost relieved. Then Elijah added softly, "But it tells us where to keep looking." Eleanor's eyes shifted toward him. That was the moment something changed, not because she suddenly believed he had been wronged, but because every time emotion invited him toward revenge, he chose discipline instead. He wasn't trying to defeat Marcus. He was trying to protect the process from collapsing before the truth could stand on its own. Her phone vibrated once inside her purse. She glanced down at the screen. The caller ID displayed only one word: bored. She silenced it without answering. Marcus noticed. "You seem unusually invested in our admissions procedures." "I am," she replied simply. "More than you realize." Before Marcus could press further, Denise opened another archived menu by mistake while trying to close the report. A scanned PDF flashed across the screen for only an instant before disappearing again. At the top was an old document bearing the Whitmore Scholarship Charter. Beneath the school crest, one sentence was still visible before the window closed. "Every scholarship letter submitted by a child applicant shall be reviewed personally before any final decision is recorded." Eleanor did not move. Neither did Elijah. Slowly, almost unconsciously, Eleanor looked from that vanished sentence to the folded letter still resting safely in Lily's hands. Then she looked back at Marcus. His forehead carried the first small shine of perspiration anyone had seen all morning. He reached into his jacket, slipped his phone into his pocket without reading the screen, and spoke more quietly than before. "Perhaps this conversation should continue privately." Eleanor finally lifted her eyes to meet his. "No, Mr. Bennett," she said. "This has already become far too large to fit behind a closed office door." By late morning, the admissions office no longer looked like a waiting room. It looked like a room that had been asked to tell the truth. The cream chairs had been pulled into a loose half-circle facing the marble counter. The parents who had arrived with quiet confidence now stood near the glass wall with folded arms and uncertain faces. Denise sat behind the desk with her hands clasped so tightly, her silver bracelet had left a red mark on her wrist. Mr. Paul stood beside the trophy case holding the yellow service log against his chest. Lily stayed close to Elijah, one hand wrapped around 2 fingers of his left hand, the other holding her wrinkled letter against her sweater. The tiny star at the bottom was still creased down the middle. Elijah could feel how tired she was getting, how much effort it took for a 9-year-old to stand in a room full of adults who had already tried to decide her worth without listening to her. He bent slightly and said, "You don't have to say anything unless you want to." Lily nodded, then leaned into his side. Eleanor Whitmore stood near the front desk, not yet introduced, not yet explaining why her voice could make employees stop moving. She had asked for the confrontation to happen here, in the same admissions office where Lily had been told to use the side exit, because moving it to a private conference room would make the wound too clean. The fountain still ran over black stone. The orchids still sat in their glass vase. The red camera light still blinked in the corner. Marcus Bennett stood in front of his office door with his suit jacket buttoned, his expression composed again, the first shine of sweat wiped from his forehead. "I want to be very clear," he said to the room, using the careful tone of a man who knew how to sound reasonable under pressure. Whitmore Academy does not discriminate against any child. What happened today was an unfortunate combination of scheduling confusion, a misplaced personal note, and a parent understandably upset by disappointment. The word parent hung there. Not Mr. Carter. Not father. Just parent. A few heads turned toward Elijah. He did not move. Marcus continued, "I respect Mr. Carter's concern for his daughter, but concern cannot override procedure. If every family demanded immediate exceptions in front of other applicants, this office would become chaos." For a breath it worked. The parents near the windows relaxed slightly. Procedure sounded safer than prejudice. Chaos sounded worse than cruelty. Denise stared down at the counter. Elijah looked at Lily's letter, then at Marcus. He did not raise his voice. "I'm not here for an exception," he said. "I'm here so the truth doesn't get buried under a nicer word." The room quieted. Eleanor looked at him for one long second, then placed the first item on the counter. Lily's handwritten letter. She did not open it yet. She set it where everyone could see the bent corner, the soft pencil marks, the small star Lily had drawn. "This is the document that was called unnecessary," Eleanor said. Marcus gave a controlled nod. "Because it was not part of the active academic packet at that stage." "Not part of the packet," Eleanor repeated, as if testing the shape of the phrase. She placed the second item beside it. Elijah's printed appointment confirmation. The page was still folded into neat quarters, the faint oil smudged dark at one edge. "This is the appointment confirmation the school sent this family. 9:30 a.m. Marcus turned toward the parents. "Printed confirmations can be outdated. That is why we use the live system." "Then we will use the live system," Eleanor said. She gestured to the IT technician. The young man connected the laptop to the wall display above the admissions counter. The screen flickered blue, then filled with the activity log. Rows of text appeared. Applicant ID, time, edit, user. Lily saw her name and squeezed Elijah's fingers. Elijah moved his thumb once over her knuckles. "Breathe," he whispered. Marcus stepped forward. "Again, logs require context." "You will have time to give it," Eleanor said. The technician highlighted the line that showed Lily Carter's interview changed at 6:12 a.m. from 9:30 to 7:15 under the account M. Bennett. A low murmur moved through the room. Marcus held up one hand. That edit was part of a morning cleanup. Every admissions office adjusts calendars. It is not unusual, and it certainly does not prove malice. For a moment he almost had them again. Morning cleanup sounded boring. Boring things are easy to trust. Then Elijah spoke without stepping away from Lily. "The office opens at 8. The murmur stopped. Even the fountain seemed quieter. Marcus looked at him. Elijah did not stare him down. He simply added, "If it was a routine cleanup, why was my daughter marked late before any family could check in?" Eleanor did not smile. She placed the third item on the counter, a printed still from the hallway camera. It showed Lily's letter on the chair beside her backpack, star side up. Then another still, Denise lifting the letter. Then a third, Marcus's 2 fingers tapping the stack of folders before Denise opened the lower drawer. Denise covered her mouth. Marcus's voice tightened but did not break. A still image removes context. Denise was likely organizing loose materials. Was she? Eleanor asked. Denise. The receptionist looked at Marcus first, then down at the photo. Her eyes filled, but she kept her voice low. He told me to hold it back until he reviewed whether the family fit scholarship criteria. Marcus turned sharply. Denise. The word cracked like a ruler against a desk. Lily flinched. Elijah shifted just enough to block her view of Marcus without hiding her from the room. She's a child, he said quietly. Keep your voice for the adults. That was the first time several people looked ashamed. Eleanor reached into the folder beside her purse and placed one more page face down on the counter, but did not turn it over. Marcus saw the crest through the back of the paper and his composure changed in one small place. His left hand stopped moving. Eleanor finally looked around the room at the parents, the staff, the man in the electrician's uniform, and the little girl holding a letter everyone had tried not to read. Before we go any further, she said, there is something you should know about my relationship to this institution. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out before Eleanor turned over the final page and the Whitmore crest appeared at the top. The Whitmore crest appeared at the top of the page, embossed in dark blue ink, and the room seemed to take one collective breath and hold it. Eleanor Whitmore placed her palm beside the crest, not over it, as if even she understood the weight of what it meant. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, she said. I founded this school 31 years ago, and I signed the original scholarship charter you are looking at. The fountain kept running, but no one seemed to hear water anymore. A coffee cup trembled in a parent's hand. Denise slowly lowered her eyes to the desk. Marcus Bennett stood perfectly still, but the color had drained from the skin around his mouth. Eleanor turned the page so everyone could see the line beneath the school seal. Her voice stayed low, but every word traveled. Every scholarship letter submitted by a child applicant shall be reviewed personally before any final decision is recorded. Lily's hand tightened around Elijah's fingers. Elijah did not look at Marcus. He looked at the paper, then at his daughter, as if he wanted her to understand that this was not magic. This was not pity. This was a rule that had existed before anyone in that room decided she was too small to matter. Marcus tried to recover. Mrs. Whitmore, with respect, that language is historical. Our modern process has evolved. Eleanor nodded once. Yes, it has. She placed Lily's letter beside the charter. The wrinkled page looked painfully small next to the official document. Pencil lines beside embossed ink. A child's star beside a founder's seal. And today we are going to find out what it evolved into. She opened the letter. The paper made a soft sound in her hands, a fragile scrape that somehow silenced the shifting shoes, the whispering parents, even the faint hum of the air conditioner. Lily turned her face toward Elijah's uniform sleeve. Do I have to read it? She whispered. Elijah bent his head close to hers. No, baby. You already wrote the truth. Let the adults carry it now. Eleanor heard that. Her eyes flicked to Elijah for a moment, then returned to the page. She began to read. Dear Whitmore Academy, my name is Lily Carter. I am 9 years old. I know I am applying for a scholarship, but my daddy says scholarship does not mean begging. He says it means somebody opens a door because they believe you will walk through it with respect. No one moved. A father near the window lowered his phone. Denise pressed her knuckles against her mouth. Eleanor continued, and her voice grew rough at the edge. Not dramatic, just human. My daddy fixes broken things. He fixes lights in our building when Mrs. Alvarez cannot pay. He fixes the heater at church when the babies are cold. He says some people only notice broken things when they stop working for rich people, but good people should notice before that. Elijah closed his eyes once. He had not known she had written that. His hand, the one not holding Lily's, curled slowly around the seam of his pants. The room was no longer looking at him like a man in a tool belt who had entered the wrong place. They were looking at him like the letter had turned a light toward something they should have seen without needing a child to explain it. Eleanor read the final lines. I want to go to Whitmore because a good school should notice quiet people too. If I get to learn here, I will work hard. If I do not get chosen, I hope you still read my letter, because my daddy says every person deserves to be heard before they are judged. The last word seemed to fall onto the marble counter and stay there. Judged. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The printer behind Denise clicked once, then stopped. Somewhere outside the glass doors, a car passed over wet pavement. Inside the room, the silence became so complete that the tiny buzz from the overhead light sounded like a warning. Eleanor placed the letter down. Then, one by one, she set the evidence beside it. Elijah's appointment confirmation. 9:30. The activity log. Changed at 6:12 under Mr. Bennett's account. The camera stills. Letter removed from the applicant's possession and placed in a drawer. The service log. Emergency repair completed by Mr. Carter during the same incident, without charge, because a child was trapped behind a security door. The email subject line printed by the IT technician after preserving the screen. Donor family priority list. Finally, the Whitmore Scholarship Charter. Letters must be read before decisions are recorded. Marcus swallowed. Sounded dry. There is context. Eleanor looked at him. Then give it. He opened his mouth. His eyes moved to the camera in the corner, then to Denise, then to the parents who had stopped looking, willing to be on his side. The donor list helps maintain institutional relationships, he said. Scholarship management requires discretion. Discretion, Eleanor repeated. Is that what you called writing low family fit on a child's file? A murmur broke across the room and died just as quickly. Marcus's hand reached for the silver pen in his jacket pocket, but it slipped from his fingers and struck the floor with a small, bright sound. No one picked it up. Eleanor's voice hardened, but never rose. Effective immediately, Marcus Bennett is suspended from all admissions duties pending an independent audit. All scholarship decisions from this cycle are frozen. Every redirected scholarship file from the last 3 years will be reopened. The board will receive the preserved footage, activity logs, emails, and the original charter before end of day. Denise began to cry silently behind the desk. Marcus stared at the pen on the floor as if it belonged to someone else. Lily finally looked up. Daddy! Elijah crouched in front of her, the same way he had in their kitchen that morning. He wiped one tear from her cheek with his thumb. You were never out of place, he said. They just put the door in the wrong place. Eleanor turned toward Lily, not above her, not over her, but with careful respect. Lily Carter, your application will be restored and reviewed by an independent scholarship committee. Not as a favor, as your right. Lily held the letter to her chest and let out a breath so small only Elijah heard it. The room had gone silent for her, but Elijah did not smile like a man who had won. He looked at the reopened folders, the frozen decisions, the other names hidden inside the system, and asked the only question that made Eleanor lift her eyes again. What happens to the other children? The first thing that left the admissions office was the noise. Parents stepped away from the glass wall without the little whispers they had carried in with them. Denise sat behind the desk, crying silently while an HR representative placed a sealed evidence envelope beside her keyboard and asked for her written statement. Marcus Bennett did not shout. He did not fight. He simply stood with his silver pen still on the floor until a board member asked him to surrender his access badge, and the soft click of that badge being removed from his jacket sounded louder than any apology he had not given. Elijah kept Lily close while Eleanor Whitmore spoke to the staff in a voice steady enough to hold the whole room together. The scholarship decisions would be frozen. The activity logs, camera footage, emails, service log, and original charter would be sent to an independent auditor. Lily's file would be restored, but not rushed through as a favor, and every redirected scholarship file from the last 3 years would be reopened. When Eleanor turned to Elijah and said, Mr. Carter, your daughter will receive a formal apology from this school. He looked down at Lily's tired face and answered, "Make it addressed to her. She needs to know grown-ups can say when they were wrong." That was all he asked for. Not a check. Not a headline. Not a room full of people praising him because they had finally understood what his uniform never hid. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived in a thick white envelope with Whitmore Academy's crest pressed into the flap. Lily opened it at the kitchen table where the story had begun, her orange juice set safely on a paper towel. Elijah sitting across from her in the same dark blue work shirt, his tool pouch resting by the door. She read every word slowly. The school apologized for failing to protect her dignity, for allowing her letter to be withheld, and for treating her family's income like a measure of her worth. By the time she reached the final sentence, her voice had stopped shaking. "You belong in every room where your character and effort have earned you a place." Elijah looked toward the empty chair by the window, the one he still thought of as his wife's, and for once the ache in his chest did not feel like failure. Felt like witness. The Independent Review took longer than people online would have wanted. But it was real. Marcus was removed from admissions after the audit confirmed repeated manual edits, hidden letters, and donor priority routing. Denise kept her job only after she gave a full statement, completed ethics training, and agreed to testify before the board. Eleanor made the apology public without using Lily as a prop. She stood in the scholarship room with the original charter behind glass and announced the new policy. Every scholarship letter from a child applicant would be read by 3 independent reviewers before any decision could be recorded. They called it the letter rule. Lily's wrinkled page, with the tiny star creased through the middle, was framed beside a copy of the rule, not as a trophy, but as a warning to adults who forgot that quiet children are still speaking. When Lily's scholarship was approved, Elijah did not let the moment turn her into a symbol too heavy for a 9-year-old to carry. He took her for pancakes at the little diner near their apartment, let her order extra strawberries, and told her she was allowed to be happy without feeling responsible for fixing the whole world. "But what about the other kids?" she asked, syrup shining on her fork. Elijah smiled softly. "That part belongs to the adults now." On her first day at Whitmore, the morning air smelled like cut grass and rain on pavement. Elijah parked his old truck across from the front gate and walked Lily to the main entrance in his work boots. His uniform clean but faded at the elbows. His toolbox was in the truck bed where it always was. Earlier, some people had looked at that toolbox and seen poverty, interruption, a man who belonged near service doors. Now Lily saw it differently. It was the thing her father carried because broken things deserved patience, because danger should be fixed before it trapped someone, because dignity could wear scuffed leather and still stand straight. Eleanor waited near the steps, not with cameras, not with balloons, just with 2 cups of coffee and the kind of respect that did not need an audience. "Mr. Carter," she said, "this school was built for children like Lily. I forgot that systems do not stay honest on their own." Elijah took the coffee, then looked at the front doors. "Then don't make my daughter the exception," he said. "Make sure the next child doesn't need a miracle." Eleanor nodded, and this time no one called it emotion instead of procedure. Lily looked up at her father. "Are you coming in?" He crouched, straightened the strap of her backpack, and brushed one braid back from her cheek. "This part is yours," he said. "I'll be right here when school lets out." She hugged him hard, then walked through the front doors without looking for a side exit. For a moment, Elijah stood still at the bottom of the steps, one hand resting on his wedding band, the other holding the warm paper cup Eleanor had given him. Around him, the campus settled into a quiet that was not shame, not shock, not fear. It was the silence of people understanding something too late and trying to live differently because of it. The door closed gently behind Lily, and Elijah Carter turned back toward his truck. Still a father, still an electrician, still the kind of man who fixed what he could without asking who would notice. Because dignity does not have to raise its voice, and kindness, when protected by truth, can become the miracle that opens the right door.